Okay, yeah, let's get that over with. Okay, so I call to order the special meeting of May 17th at 4:07 PM. We have minutes from May 2nd and May 11th.
I would suggest we could approve both of them,
Okay,
May 2nd and May 11th, as written.
okay. Moved by Ward, second by Cotton, and I'll third it. It's been thirded.
Well, I think Jennifer and I actually vote on this, so.
Oh, okay,
Because we're technically committee members for two different committees, so.
okay,
That's right.
all right. So unanimous, 5.
Unanimous. Trying to figure out.
We have one group today, right?
Yeah. Sorry, I just muted myself because I was going to call Derek. So Barton Logiadice, they are in the waiting room, so we'll let them in. All right, Derek is just joining us. And I'm looking for the questions.
Oh, I forgot about the questions.
I have them. Do you want me to send them out?
Would you please? Oh,
Sure.
you'll find it quickly.
Yeah, because I'm not finding them. Oh, there we are.
Just sent them.
Got it. Thank you.
Welcome. We got your email correct.
Yeah.
Jen, one of the things I realized we need to do is we need to do reference checks.
I realized I thought of that too.
So
When is this committee going to get together to score these? How are we?
well, we have some discussion this afternoon, and it may be set like maybe the reference checks are done before the full commission. So
Maybe say that again. Maybe the reference checks.
it may be like these identifying firms today, subject to positive reference checks that are
Yes,
performed before the commission meets.
Yeah, I think that would be great.
And have you done reference checks on everybody?
No, we were just saying we haven't done that yet, so
Oh,
it may that may be something that happens. Staff does between now and
you have worked
Commission meeting.
with several of them, right?
we have we've in different capacities. And then one of the things that we did for an RFP for our fire truck was that rather than having staff call references, we actually just did a reference survey and emailed it out to people and just said like,
Ooh, that's great.
so
Dot form?
huh?
Dot form?
You know it. So I think we'll probably, that would be my recommendation to make this easier, is to just send this out to folks' references and just say, you know, just ask them a series of questions and have them rate them and
I
see
like
what we
that.
get.
Yeah, and then we have it all consistent in one, that's really.
Right. Whereas in order to do this, like I think Jen and I had to do each do calls last time. And it's just hard. So it's like, it's just easier to
Calling
just
back
have
and
one.
forth.
Yeah, just one set of questions, just email people. It takes a couple of minutes to go through and go, yeah, they're blah, blah, blah. So
Do you need that on the ones you've worked with?
we should really do it with everybody just to be
Consistent.
Thorough.
consistent. Yep. Oh, and Eric is here. Hello. All right, I'm gonna let in Barton and Legita so we can get moving.
My apologies all.
It's okay. It happens. Good afternoon.
Oh, and welcome.
You guys are muted. So,
Good afternoon.
hi, welcome. We're gonna just start with brief introductions and then I'll do an overview of the background and why we're seeking services. And then we have, if you want to do a little overview of your firm. And lastly, we have 5 questions for you. So I'll start. I'm Linda Painter. I'm the Director of Planning and Development.
I'm Paul Aho. I'm the Chair of Planning and Zoning.
Carlita Cotton, Vice Chair of Planning and Zoning.
Vera Ward, Secretary of Planning and Zoning.
Jennifer Kaufman, Senior Planner and Inland Wetlands Agent.
Eric Delay, Assistant Town Engineer. Nice to meet you both.
All right. So if you guys want to introduce yourselves and then we'll do the intro and then you can do your intro. How's that?
Sure. My name is Mark Zesson. I'm a licensed engineer here in Connecticut and Senior Vice President at Barton and LaJudas.
And I am Kevin Brindle, an associate with Barton and LaJudas and licensed landscape architect.
Thank you for pronouncing that, because I do believe I've been pronouncing that name, the second name, wrong for probably since you were acquired and it first came across our email. So just a little background.
This isn't the sanctioned way of saying it, Linda, but it's when I first heard it, I said like in Judas Priest, the band, and they said, yeah, LaJudas. And so ever since, that's what I tell people. Just think of LaJudas Priest, and that's us.
That helps.
So Barton and LaJudas.
Yes, correct.
Okay,
I've
I
heard
will
from
remember that.
Italians.
Yeah.
I've heard from some of my Italian friends and coworkers that that's not really how Italian people would say it, but I know that that's how Mr. LaJudas said it. So,
So
I'm
just
fine with that.
Just a little background. I believe you submitted for in response to the RFQ for professional and technical services for the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Yes.
Yep. And so just the situations in which the commission may choose to seek professional and technical assistance include times when town professional staff may be conflicted and unable to review due to a conflict. If a proposed development includes potential impacts for which staff just doesn't have the specialized experience or education to fully evaluate the potential impacts. If a proposed development is particularly large and complex and the commission really wants to ensure that all potential impacts are thoroughly evaluated and that they have the analysis to support their eventual decision, particularly in the event that a decision is appealed. So it helps give them some confidence in what they're doing. controversial projects where there may be, we're having an outside objective third party can sometimes provide a little bit more credibility, and also gives the commission, again, that expert opinion to rely on, particularly where we have projects, and we have had projects in the last few years where both the applicant and either abutters have brought in their own consultants and experts and so the commission's faced with dueling arguments. So it kind of helps to have a third party coming in that is solely responsible to them. And then the last is really staff capacity. So we are a small town, and we do have potentially some multiple projects on the horizon that could come in, in the same time frame. So we want to make sure that we can continue to assist those developers and applicants in getting their projects through the process. Other staff capacity issues involve when staff leaves. And so with that, I will fully disclose that I'm into my last, I think coming up on 2.5 weeks with the town, and I'll be moving on. So there will be a little staff capacity issue in planning for the immediate future. And we'll be probably looking a little bit more to our on-call list to assist in review of applications until my position is filled. With that, I'll turn it over to you, the two of you, and Mark and Kevin, if you can just give us a little brief overview before we get into the questions, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. I'm gonna start with an overview of Anchor Engineering, Barton LaJudas, and myself, and then turn it over to Kevin, who I've been working with for over 20 years as co-working together at Anchor Engineering and Barton LaJudas for the last 2 years. I grew up in Central Connecticut, went to the University of Connecticut and graduated in '84, went to Trinity College in Hartford, and I've worked for several government agencies before starting Anchor Engineering in 1993. Those agencies being the Wyndham Regional Planning Agency back when I was in school, and then the Connecticut Department of Transportation in the early and mid '80s, was with another consulting firm, and then I was with the Connecticut Resources Recovery Authority, which is now known as Materials Innovation and Recycling Authority. So as part of the experience, I've worked in front of zoning commissions across the state, from the city of Stamford, the city of Danbury, the city of New London, up into the Northeast Hills and Killingly, and over to Enfield, down to Essex and Old Lyme. And a lot of the projects I've worked on have been large and controversial. And a lot of them have been solid waste facilities or quarries or gravel pits. And all of those end up creating the potential nuisance and interest on behalf of the people in town general, and often the neighbors, and sometimes the neighbors and environmental people with environmental concerns get together. And so I've seen firsthand what can happen and understand the legitimate concerns of the neighbors and other concerned people in town, and the role of the commission, whether it be the Wetlands Commission or the Zoning Commission. And in '93, we formed Anchor Engineering, and in 2020, we became part of Barton LaJudas. And in those years, Anchor Engineering was approved as one of your on-call reviewers. We didn't do much work under that. We gave you a few proposals. I'm here to ask you to continue to give us that opportunity to service you, and I'm quite confident that you would be satisfied with our services. We have not lost any clients since the merger in 2020, and our capabilities have just increased quite a bit. But we have over 30 people here in Glastonbury. We're very familiar with Mansfield, Stores. Kevin and I both went to school there. Kevin is the chairman of his zoning commission in the town of Hampton. He's been on that commission 18 years. He's been the chairman of that commission for 13 years. We often talk about zoning issues because we're just quite interested in those things because that's what we do every day. But we do quite a bit of peer review work. I've overseen peer review work for the town of Kent for many years. One of the women in our office who helps us out has done a lot of those peer reviews. Denise Lord, she's identified in here. We've done many other peer reviews in some of the towns we mentioned in there, like the town of Basra, when a quarry came to town, people were interested in mining, millions of yards of rock from the quarry that raised a lot of concern. And we helped the town of Basra out that. And there are a number of towns, as we've identified in here, we've done a lot of peer review work. And some of it has been limited. The town of Windsor, they just would have us do drainage reviews when Linda identified, staff capacity. When their staff was too busy, they would say, here, we'll look at the traffic or this or that, the layout. Can you just look at the drainage? Whereas in other towns, we've done much more comprehensive, right down to looking at, all the setback requirements, lot area coverage, whatever the scope that the Mansfield's looking for. I'm confident that we can do that level of review. If we need to bring in somebody like John Adams, who has worked with us at Anchor Engineering, is now also an associate of the firm, but he's former Connecticut Department of Transportation employee. He's a former liaison between the DOT and what was then the Straight Traffic Commission. So he's quite familiar with major traffic generators, quite familiar with everything from your drive-in window for your bank type of traffic concerns to Dunkin' Donuts to any other type of as somebody who's done 27 years of mostly traffic work, John's seen quite a bit. And I mentioned Denise earlier. There's certain technical things. Denise has been with us since 1997. She doesn't like to go to meetings, frankly. We would urge her sometimes to do that, but she very much likes to get into the plans, review the plans, talk about the plans, and have Kevin or I go from there. And so with that, I'm going to just turn it over to Kevin, who I'd say with particularly the town of Cheshire that he's going to talk about, is quite familiar with dealing with a town and all the capacities Linda spoke about.
Yeah, and thank you, Mark. And again, just by reference, myself as a lifelong resident in the town of Hampton and a UConn graduate myself, very familiar with Eastern Connecticut, very familiar with the issues concerning Mansfield and the region. As a licensed landscape architect with Anchor and now with B&L with Barton & Judas, my work takes me from projects that were for the towns of Salisbury and Sharon in the northwest corner to work in the northeast corner, currently ongoing projects for the city of New London. And then, as Mark had said, he and I have both worked with the city of Danbury and their zoning commission. So really see all four corners of the state. And being centrally located here in Glastonbury, we do quite a bit of work in the River Valley as well. So really looking at taking a statewide level of experience and bringing it into a Mansfield perspective as far as application review and peer review. Like Mark had said, for the town of Cheshire, we serve the town as the consultant town engineer, myself as the client manager in that town. Started work there in 2015. They brought us on as the consultant town engineer when their town engineer retired 2 years ago. So to Linda's point in regards to capacity, we have done over 36 land use reviews in the past year and a half for the town of Cheshire because they had lost their town engineer due to retirement, and recently, or I should say a year ago, actually last May, their assistant town engineer retired. So we've been doing a predominant amount of their engineering reviews and engineering services in that role. They have now hired a new town engineer. So, we expect our peer review needs to go back to more just stormwater compliance. But again, we are very flexible as far as performing as much or as little of the process or the review as needed. Again, we work very closely with a number of towns, understanding, Linda, to your point, a small town has limited resources in some aspects. We are very comfortable taking any one of our staff and filling those needs as far as, whatever, by whatever means the town needs. And lastly, like Mark said, serving on my own planning and zoning commission, I think that provides a very, I'll say unique, but I'm saying that with a smile on my face, a very unique perspective as far as sitting on that side of the table, or I should say that side of the Zoom window for the past couple of years. I got on that commission in 2004 as an alternate, thinking, well, this may be fun on the fourth Monday night of the month. And from 2009 on, I've been the chairman of that commission, overseeing in any number of small town affairs, be it, a general store conversion into a restaurant, or a, alpaca farm into a wedding event facility. So it never ceases to entertain, and also informs what we do here on what I do here on a daily basis as far as applications, and both private and public applications. So with that understanding, we both gave a pretty lengthy introduction to ourselves. So turn that back over to you for the questions that you have.
One thing I wanted to add is Merrick Kemet, who we identified in one of the proposals, as Linda is, some people move on, and Merrick moved on right before these were to go in. And so there was a little bit of the jam up on our end in getting these in, but we got them in, and we were happy to have been shortlisted prior, but to say that Merrick won't be involved with this, primarily you would be dealing with myself. And then if applicable, I'd turn it over to Kevin or other people as the need would be. But so just wanted to address that right up front.
Okay, we have some questions to ask you. And I have the first question, which I'll divide into two parts. So there's a 1A and a 1B. And so the question is, please describe a complex development for which you have performed similar peer review services, focusing on how you address the following issues and the final outcome. And so the first part of that is ensuring that your analysis and recommendations conform to the jurisdiction afforded the agency or commission by statute, so as to ensure that a decision is not overturned for agency overreach.
I can start.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Thank you for the question, Paul. The first one that comes to my mind is a subdivision review that we've been working on with the town of Cheshire over the past 6 months. The town of Cheshire has a history of having underground mine shafts in portions of the town. And this property that was a historic greenhouse, a propagation greenhouse, within close proximity of documented mine shafts. So we worked very closely with the public works director who oversees the engineering department and the town attorney in regards to very carefully wording out peer review comments to instruct the applicant to do subsurface investigation and ground penetrating radar investigation along property lines of the application of the subject property to determine with a level of comfort suitable to the town's town attorney that we would not be negatively impacting the town road in regards to any subsurface mine shafts or adits that would be on the property. And then worked with the applicant to assure that ground penetrating radar was completed in satisfaction of the town attorney. So that was a 4 to 6 month process, working with the Planning and Zoning Commission, attending commission meetings, describing the level of work that we were recommending, and being very careful to not go on the record in regards to per se a requirement. It was just being very clear with the distinction of what we were what we were clarifying as far as, you know, the assurances that we would need to put on record and not giving direction to the applicant, or perceived direction to the applicant, and therefore making the town a party to the application.
I'll briefly add, for the town of Lebanon, we were working for many years and still do work for the town of Lebanon. And they had an application that was anticipated that at the end of the day, after many months of working on it, didn't get submitted to the town, but they were a power service provider out of New Hampshire, made up of mostly Northeast Utilities, former people, was going to put a 6-engine peaking power plant on the north end of Lebanon, just not far from the Wyndham town line. And it, I had the selectmen in Lebanon concerned, the Wetlands Commission, the Zoning Commission, people concerned, and so it fell into the Siting Council statutes. But we were still working with the potential applicant and the town for many months on preparing to address all the sound level concerns and other concerns that they were going to have with the project. But ultimately, they ended up deciding to go elsewhere. But there is still that substation there, and I know that people occasionally talk about coming back. But I mean, that's one where there were a lot of issues, and we coordinated multiple people here. I coordinated multiple people here reviewing different aspects of that potential power plant.
Okay, and so the second part of that question is working with town staff representing multiple disciplines and regulatory objectives, which may sometimes conflict. For example, strong emphasis on use of LID practices in areas where they may not be suitable due to previous contamination, or where the salt and other chemical de-icing materials are strongly discouraged to protect groundwater quality.
Again, I'll take a first crack at this one. Once again, Town of Cheshire, that's going to be a common reference that I have just based upon the amount of work I've been doing there. Specifically, the engineering department in Cheshire is within the Public Works Department. That adds a level of conflict that is readily apparent at times during those projects. And Paul, to your initial point there, as far as LID components specifically, I will say one specific reference was a beach restoration project that we performed this time last year in order to get one of the town beaches ready for Memorial Day weekend. The Public Works Department initial belief was the import of 600 tons of sand would hopefully not require permits through the Wetlands Commission. That was very quickly determined not to be the case when we had our preliminary meetings with with town staff, be it the wetlands agent, be it the Planning and Zoning Commission, and Public Works staff. So in a very quick process, we were able to provide a limited field survey, generation of base mapping, and kind of a quantitative analysis based upon water quality concerns, resident concerns as far as the import of materials into the town beach, and then the restoration once the project was complete of adjacent lawn areas and wetland areas. So kind of navigating the permit process or perceived permit process between Public Works and their environmental planner. That was a very successful project that got completed on the Friday before Memorial Day weekend, but it really did take everybody involved kind of pushing that forward, recognizing that a lot of the project was performed, after the permit was approved through the Wetlands Commission. We were working with town staff, the Highway Department, Public Works, and Park and Rec in order to make sure everything got done in a very timely and very expedited path, while making sure that all the erosion sedimentation controls were in place and installed. The matting was installed for the truck access and so on, and then everything was demobilized in time for Memorial Day weekend. So I think that points to a very successful dialogue between multiple town staff.
Okay, thank you. Jennifer has a question.
If I might just interject a quick moment. I am a commercial property owner in Hampton, so I just want to have a perceived conflict here. So I'm just going to recuse myself from this interview. It's not that I don't think we can't be objective, but I just want to remove myself from interview at this point in time. And it's no offense to Kevin or anybody else on this group. They seem like really great people. So.
Understood, Derek. I do understand your perceived conflict. I have seen you in front of my commission and recognize your interest in the town of Hampton. I will say, as a town resident, I appreciate the property and development you have, but I fully understand the recusal.
Okay, Jennifer.
Okay. All right. So what methods do you use to provide clear guidance to both applicants and commission members? And I know you've alluded to that a little bit in some of your previous answers, but if you just want to reiterate that.
I will go first, and Mark, you can chime in. Jennifer, most of our dialogue becomes written dialogue between ourselves and the chairman of the commission. There are times that dialogue goes to staff members, be it the planner, the environmental planner, or the director of public works, kind of depending on the nature of the application. I will say, if it's more of a commission level notice of violation, that dialogue would be, in written letter format back to the commissioners through the chairman. If it's more of the planning and zoning level, stormwater management compliance items, those typically go to the director of public works, because he's the one overseeing the town requirements in regards to the stormwater compliance. There are plenty of times that more informal, email chains obviously can't be avoided. And there are a limited number of times that, phone calls directly between ourselves and the applicants do occur. If at times like that, there's always a record of those calls put back into an email, so that there's obviously a paper trail back. There are obviously plenty of opportunities for site visits, site inspections, and once construction is underway on a number of these jobs, inspection reports and so on, based upon site visits and such. So it kind of gives you a full a la carte menu of things that we get involved in on any given time on any given project. But the most careful thing we need to be aware of is everything that does become public records, where there's a written path, and nothing nothing is a phone call that's not recorded in writing.
Yeah, I would say on the limited reviews, I was involved for many years, and we still do some for the town of Windsor. We would typically get asked either by the town engineer or the assistant town engineer to do the reviews, and our staff engineer, who I mentioned earlier, Denise, would frequently send whatever comments she had to the assistant town engineer and town engineer both, and often the applicant's engineer. That's how they worked. And we, so if the town is comfortable with that type of thing, we would do that. But it wasn't a full broad scope review of the whole application. We were just looking at the drainage, questions regarding the drainage, maybe a difference in opinion about one aspect of it. And but everything was always including the town staff, so everybody knew exactly what we were saying, and putting it in writing for the reason Kevin said. The only other thing I'd say is, on some of the work we've done for other commissions, post-approval, we're often dealing with the developer or the developer's contractor in copying the town staff and ultimately the commissions if there's issues where there was a requirement to do things through the construction process, often with wetlands commissions, but sometimes with zoning on major developments. So we're very good at communicating, but tend to be careful about making sure everything's in writing.
Okay, question from Carlita.
If we requested assistance on an application submitted by a previous client of yours, how would you respond to our request?
Initially, that would be a conversation between yourselves and us. If there is an ultimate conflict, then obviously we would be looking to not be involved in that review. But if it is purely a perceived conflict, or if it's something that we are in agreement there has no conflict, we would go on the record to the commission as indicating our previous relationship. And if everybody on this call was comfortable with us proceeding, we would. But obviously, we would fully understand if we were not the selected firm to be doing that review.
Okay, I'll ask the question Derek was going to ask. If we requested assistance on an application similar to a project you're working on for a client in Mansfield or a neighboring town, how would you respond?
I'd say similarly to
Yeah.
what Kevin said, we would let you know the circumstances regardless. And point out those similarities, and we would the way we look at it is whatever we're doing currently, then we would take, presume we couldn't stop that, we would just say we'll stop. We won't proceed with what we're doing for you if it's going to cause anybody to take issue with what we're doing, or to think that we're not being objective in what we're doing. But I'd say, though sometimes people use the couch word of an opinion, just about everything we do is based on the facts of what's on the plan sheet or what they're actually proposing.
Yeah, and that's, obviously in the realm of public meetings, a lot's left up to perspective. So we would need to be comfortable, we as in, ourselves as well as yourselves, with what that perceived perspective may look like from the outside. We wouldn't want to be in a position to negatively impact the process by conflict, be it, perceived or actual on any of our projects. So once again, go back to the previous, kind of the conclusion of the previous statement was, or the previous question, that if it was a project that you would prefer us not to be involved in, we would wholeheartedly understand that. But also offer the opinion that there is, the technical knowledge that we would bring to the peer review would be based upon the insights we would have on the expertise, whether it was a recent project or a historic project. Again, all of that would be based upon the technical perspective and would not be based upon opinion. So.
Okay, question from Vera. You're muted.
Sorry. We've been involved recently in several large development projects that also involved a third-party intervener, and the public hearings were fast and furious with lots of facts, quote unquote, being thrown around. So if one of your team members or subcontractors was underperforming or wasn't providing clear information for the commission, how would you handle that?
Frankly, my first approach would be to push that team member into a higher level performance. My second approach would be to seek other assistance from somebody else, frankly. I have fortunately not had to run into that under the time of timeframes that you're going to be talking about, where you have statutory deadlines on getting things addressed by the next meeting, or you have 65 days or 130 days, whatever the statute says on whatever's in front of you. So we're well aware that the type of work you're looking for us to do will need to be done promptly and done very well. And like I said, I haven't come across it, but if I did come across it, and sometimes it's, somebody, it does happen that people get injured or something unexpected happens and you need to go get somebody else to do it. So that's what, if the worst case scenario, if there's no way to get them to step up, then I would say we get somebody else to step up. Because if you're under the gun, you're under the gun to say, okay, we need to address something by the next time the hearing's been tabled till next week, or, then you need answers by next week.
Are you on call for UConn, or have you worked for UConn?
We right now have done one project for the university, and they did not, they extended our current contract, and it's regarding structural repairs to the north and south garages on campus. That's the only thing we've ever done for the university. It's not something that neither Kevin nor I are structural engineers, but we do have people who work on bridges and vertical construction in our office, and we have experts in the area of parking garages in our New York office, and so that's that's the only thing that we have done for the university, and they extended our contract on that assignment. It's not to say that they may ask us to do something else down the road, but in the last 30 years, that's what they've asked us to do. I do say that I go to campus with some frequency, but Kevin drive by.
That's it. That's our limited work at UConn.
Thanks.
Okay, what else do we need to do, Linda?
That's it. If no one has any other questions, Mark and Kevin are free to go, and then we'll bring Derek back in just for the discussion portion and next steps.
Thank you for making a presentation to us.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
He's back.
I'm back. Thank you, everybody.
No, we get it. And I was impressed that he recognized you.
We've had some good conversations over the past couple of years.
Oh, good.
All right, so we are now on to discussion and recommendations. And Derek, first up is IWA, and then when we get to PZC, I'm assuming you're just going to kind of recuse yourself from any comments on Barton and LeJudas, because that is not how I've been saying it for like 3 years now. So
And BL and then B and L is just confusing. So I can appreciate that.
So
There's only 2 that presented for IWA, right?
Yeah,
there are, and
been talking about this.
Yes.
So one comment, I think I'm a little concerned. This is just me, and I'm not on the wetlands committee, so I'm going to keep my mouth shut because I'm not on the committee. I have no role in this.
Okay, Jen,
Jen and Derek.
talk to us then.
So we SWCA, right? That's how they are the one. They have BL as their engineering partner, and BL does a lot of work for applicants, so they're going to often be conflicted out. CHA, I felt very good about them. I've worked with Chuck. I have worked with Rick Canavan. That was one of my first applications I did as inland wetlands agent over on East Road, and I thought they were good. But they sometimes get conflicted out. So I think we probably need to go back out for wetlands. And I
We have
think
to do this again. Now, didn't SLR say that they could do IWA, but they hadn't asked for it?
right. They didn't submit for it. They didn't do that RFQ. And the other thing is that Trink House and Land Tech never submitted either for this. So I think sadly, and we talked with Derek, Linda, and I talked about just asking the different engineering firms, encouraging people to bid on the ones that were that PZC chose for their work, to also bring in a sub for wetlands. because that really works out the best way. Really, it's hard to have wetlands working with one consultant, like Land Tech, they're doing the stormwater, and then we get Weston and Sampson, and then we have to sub out with Land Tech, and it just, it's.
That makes sense. Yeah, just
Yeah.
get one. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the two firms, they seem, I worked with SWCA when I was in consulting. So, I mean, I've seen their work before. And I mean, I think you have two good candidates there, but again, with that potential conflict or perceived conflict with BL companies, I think it might be wise just to kind of broaden that out. So this way you're not just sole sourcing one particular firm. And I echo what Jennifer said. It's often very helpful to have a consultant set of eyes on the entire project. So especially since so many things kind of interact. Traffic interacts with the stormwater interacts with the wetlands, you name it. So it's definitely very helpful on that front. Yeah, and I think
So maybe we can just ignore those two and then choose the PZC ones.
I think what we're saying is like, it's not ignoring. I think I think what Derek and Jennifer are saying is their recommendation would be to go back out to reissue the RFQ. And I think also kind of maybe include the specifics of, we strongly encourage you to partner with firms that are on the PZC on-call list so that there can be one comprehensive review. Can we do that? I don't know.
I would more go along I don't know if we can say that specifically, but you could at least identify.
Yeah.
At the very least, you would identify who's on that list, and then maybe there's potential for some sort of partnering, et cetera. Not to say that the existing firms that you have there are not qualified. I think they're well qualified. I think the question will be will they have to resubmit, re-interview at this point in time? Or do we want to, I think we may have to, but maybe they can just submit their existing packages as is, and then it'll be a question of interview.
And I was gonna say, I think to Jen's point, just so I can literally, and Derek, correct me if I'm wrong, I can think of an upcoming project where both of these firms are conflicted out.
I do too.
And that is literally on the horizon, and neither one of them would be able to work on this.
Right.
So can't we just say we don't want those two? And
I don't think Derek and Jennifer are saying we don't want them. I think they're saying we need a bigger list. And unfortunately, we don't think we can select them and then go out again. We think the correct process is we need to go out again.
we need a bigger list and then not select them. Rather, okay, I get it.
This, we want to qualify more people. We want to have a list where we have SWCA, we also have CHA, but we may need two other firms that won't have that potential conflict. I know there was two firms that kind of expressed it during our interviews. WMC said, oh, well, we would bring on somebody. Or then also, I think another one was SLR. Oh, we could do that as well. So I think there was interest. I just think they perceived that they could interview for both at the same time, where it wasn't set up that way. You really had to apply, you had to submit qualifications on both respective components. And I think that's where they may have struggled with a little bit. So I think you'll probably see those two firms or probably a few other firms that will submit on this RFQ. So basically we're saying, go back out for the RFQ, collect these firms, and then shortlist 3 or 4, however many makes sense or we've deemed qualified at that point in time. So I think there's nothing wrong with the two firms. It's just you kind of, especially with the amount of development that we're seeing right now, it would be a good idea to have some of those additional firms, to have have a longer, a bigger bench, let's say.
Okay, so for IWA, we're going to go back out.
Yes.
I have one question about this because there is a real shortage of soil scientists in Connecticut. Like, I don't know if you've noticed, but many of them are retiring. And so I'm wondering if SLR, or they could sub with the same people, right? I don't see an issue with that. It's just how Derek, we'll have to word that. You'll have to help me word this so that this works.
Yeah, and I think what I've heard from Derek and Jennifer is not that these two firms aren't qualified, it's that we just need more. And unfortunately, Jen actually asked, and she's like, well, can't we just select these two and then go out and ask for more? And I'm like, I don't think we can do that. I think it's either all or nothing. And it just puts those firms in a position. And I think the communication to them is, it's not that you weren't qualified, it's that the committee had concerns about the number of conflicts and needing to get a deeper bench, as Derek said. So, encouraging them to resubmit, and, maybe.
And then we do need to check in with Charmaine, or our finance director, to make sure, to see if we can extend the contract for the existing on-call list just for maybe 3 months, just to give us a little bit of wiggle room here.
Would you educate me and tell me what types of conflicts we're talking about?
Oh, well, BL, for example, 1659 Stores Road, that's the Toast property that you had a pre-application with. They're planning to submit, and they are the design engineer for.
I see.
So
And I think CHA did sewer work for that same property. So,
yeah, so
one project, your two wetlands consultants are automatically.
Yeah, that's gonna be hard.
Okay, so for the moment, we're done with the IWA.
So.
On to the PZC.
So PZC, you have six proposals.
Do we not have the same problem there? I mean, are the biggest firms CHA and Weston and Sampson? Or
SLR is also a good.
SLR is probably.
Yeah.
And I don't know how large Barton and LaJudas is.
I think they said they had 30 people in Glastonbury.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the smaller firms, it's just they've been acquired, so they've been bought out by larger companies. I think of these two, WMC and Westcott and Mapes are probably the small companies.
I got that feeling.
The challenge I had with both of those proposals is that it seemed, in terms of what was submitted to us, it seemed to be limited to civil engineering. And I think while they indicated, I know at least one, it might have been WM, I can't remember which one it was now, was like, oh, no, we have the resumes for these folks. And I think they sent them to me, and I'm like, but you didn't submit them.
Right.
And that was, and I think they kind of approached this as, well, we'll bring on people as subs as we need it based on the RFP. And unfortunately, I think what we were looking for is put together your team now, because we don't want to have to vet your subs on a case-by-case basis.
Aren't we working currently with Weston and Sampson?
They're on our on-call list currently, yes.
Yeah.
And yes, Vera, they have done work for other applicants, and they have always approached us and said, is there a conflict? And usually I would say the applicants that they've worked for have typically been smaller projects, as opposed to the work that they've done for us, where they've done, mainly looking at traffic and landscape architecture on some of the very large projects that have come through. And then
the presentations that Weston Sampson made and that SLR made were impressive. They were the ones that had their act together.
Yep, I think CHA was another
Yes.
one that, had some past.
PHJ wasn't bad either.
Yeah.
Yep, go ahead, Carly.
And I think those are the three. And then I would also add Barton and LaJudas today, that when I go through their proposals, kind of hit the notes that we were looking for, which was, the things we identified the most were traffic engineering, landscape architecture. They all had that on their team. I think CHA, SLR, Weston and Sampson also brought in the kind of planning zoning aspect. And, in terms of backing up staff on that, we typically have not asked for that assistance, but I think that's going to be changing at least in the near term, just given what's coming in and my departure. So having that ability to review for zoning compliance is important.
Can we put 4 on the list? Or do we have to have less than 4?
No, you can put as many as you want on the list.
I think last time you chose them all, maybe. Maybe there was one that you did not choose, but it's nice to have a big list because sometimes you really have to pick up the phone and say, can you, you need, we're sending this out and hoping you'll put in a proposal. Because it's a quick turnaround for these folks.
I think last time what you ended up doing, so for example, if I remember, it was Steve Trinkus was limited to stormwater because again, it was like, this is what he presented. So I think similarly, if you wanted to put all of them on the list, then I think Westcott and Mapes and WMC would need to be similarly limited to civil and kind of civil engineering assistance and not asking them for traffic because again, from a procurement standpoint, they didn't provide that as part of the proposal, and that's not fair to other firms who did provide it as requested.
How many do we need on our on-call? How many?
There's no
There's
set
a-
number. I guess.
There's no set number, you know.
But I
we
mean, what are
have-
we looking for? We are not just choosing one, we're choosing several.
No, yeah, you definitely.
You want several. I mean,
you
you want
want
like a
several.
good handful.
Because you want the, again, as Jen put it, if someone's conflicted out, you want the ability to have someone to go to.
Or
And
simply they don't have the time. I mean,
Right.
sometimes, yeah.
sometimes they, there were folks on our last on-call list who never bid.
Yep, tag and bond.
once.
Yep.
Wright Pierce never bid. They got on the list, they never bid. I don't know why. We sent them the RFPs, they never bid. So, and it may have just been, hey, we're busy, we don't have the time. I think they did not resubmit. There was another one who didn't resubmit, and I'm guessing it's because they didn't get the contracts. And I know that they had sent me emails going, well, we should get it if you consider X, Y, and Z. So I think they were probably going, okay, we just never win, so we're not going to spend our time on that anymore. That's my guess. I don't know. They have not told me that. But I think if you go with all of them, the only thing I would say is that with Westcott and Mapes and WMC, again, I think you're just saying you're limited to civil engineering, and you may get to a point where, for example, if in some bizarre case, your other four, if you have Barton and LaJudas, CHA, SLR, and Weston and Sampson are either A, conflicted, or B, don't have capacity, that you may have to literally go out to bid or ask if what WMC and Westcott and Mapes are on the list to say, okay, we need you to go bring in a sub, and we're going to have to vet that. It's what we're trying to avoid with this process, but
It seems like to have the greatest flexibility, we should just take them all, right? We don't have to use them. Right.
Do we have to pay a fee up front, or do we have a contract with them? No, nothing.
All this does is when we get projects in and Jen and I look at it and go, and Derek, and we go, you know what, we're gonna need help on this. And we do the RFP. Instead of having to advertise this on the state website and go through like a 3-week response period, we literally can send this, because we've already done the vetting of their qualifications. We just send it to whoever's on the list and say, you have X, get us a proposal by X date as to how much, what you would do, how much it's going to cost. And then we give we review those proposals, we give them to you with an analysis, looking at cost, and you typically have chosen the lowest responsive bidder.
So we can take all of them just with the restrictions on WMC and Westcott.
Yeah, I mean, it's
I
Okay,
think that's the way to go.
good.
so, and I would say probably what you'd want to do is do this subject to references, because we do need to do that. And I guess one of my questions just in this is, did anyone have time to read all the sample reports that I emailed out? Do you want to read? Do you want to look
No.
at those
No.
before you make a decision?
I glanced
Some of
at them. It seemed to confirm my biases.
I
that
will
already
say
know.
what I thought. I was just looking at some of them. I thought it was interesting. Westcott and Mapes all date from either 2007 or 2010.
Oh,
And
Why
I don't
are they
know
on
if
our
that's a
list?
concern. Derek, if you had any thoughts on that. And I will say SLR, a lot of theirs were older too. They had kind of a range, but it may have just been, oh, we're gonna select these projects because they're the most representative, even though they're 13 years old.
That's my sense, is maybe they were bigger projects that they saw, that those were the submissions that we've had. They may have had
Okay.
small, single family subdivisions, things like that, but you know, the
Okay.
larger projects, was kind of my thought.
All right, so we'll do, Jen and I will work on a survey for references, and is that something that rather than having the committee meet again, or do you just want to have us present those results to the commission? Since the commission ultimately makes this decision, the committee's making a recommendation.
That's fine with me.
Yeah, sounds good.
I have a question regarding extending the on-call list now that we have this group together and we're going to be losing Linda's institutional knowledge soon. So on May 20th, 2019, the way that the PZC is the one who set that 3-year limit. I mean, the IWA did. Does finance have to authorize us to extend that on-call list, or is that something that the Inland Wetlands Agency has to do?
I feel like the 3 years came from somewhere.
Yeah, 3 years is what we typically use for most of our contracts.
Okay.
That's been historically how we deal with the finance component, just to make sure that our contracts are up to date, pricing's up to date. Qualifications based, I think just a simple request to finance to extend it if there's no, if IWA is in agreement with that piece, I think you can just simply request finance to extend it for 3 months to allow for it. Say we went out to bid, this is where we're at.
Okay.
And I just simply requesting that extension for 3 months, saying we did go out to bid, we didn't receive enough bidders. And that's how I would probably approach it with her.
Okay. We can talk offline about that, but great. As long
Yeah,
as
and I did, it does say, I looked at the RFQ that is typically in effect for a period of 3 years, so typically, so
okay.
3 years, 3 months.
Yeah.
Very good.
All right.
I think we can safely adjourn at 5:09 PM.
Great.
Wow. that
Thank
was
you, everyone.
fast.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Everybody.
everyone.
Take care all.
Bye-bye.